Chapter 47. The Charitable Society. Deuteronomy chapter 15, verses 12 to 23. And if thy brother, an Hebrew man, or an Hebrew woman, be sold unto thee, and serve thee 6 years, then in the 7th year thou shalt let him go free from thee, and when thou sendest him out free from thee, thou shalt not let him go away empty. Thou shalt furnish him liberally out of thy flock, and out of thy floor, and of thy winepress, of that wherewith the Lord thy God hath blessed thee, thou shalt give unto him. And thou shalt remember that thou wast a bondsman in the land of Egypt, and the Lord thy God redeemed thee. Therefore I command thee this thing today. And it shall be, if he say unto thee, I will not go away from thee, because he loveth thee and thine house, because he is well with thee. Then thou shalt take an awl and thrust it through his ear unto the door, and he shall be thy servant forever. And also unto thy maidservants thou shalt do likewise. It shall not seem hard unto thee when thou sendest him away free from thee, for he hath been worth a double hired servant to thee, in serving thee 6 years, and the Lord thy God shall bless thee in all that thou doest. All the firstling males that come of thy herd and of thy flock thou shalt sanctify unto the Lord thy God. Thou shalt do no work with the firstling of thy bullock, nor shear the firstling of thy sheep. Thou shalt eat it before the Lord thy God year by year in the place which the Lord shall choose, thou and thy household. And if there be any blemish therein, as if it be lame, or blind, or have any ill blemish, thou shalt not sacrifice it unto the Lord thy God. Thou shalt eat it within thy gates. The unclean and the clean person shall eat it alike, as the roebuck and as the hart. Only thou shalt not eat the blood thereof, thou shalt pour it upon the ground as water. Deuteronomy chapter 15, verses 12 to 23. According to God's law, no covenant man could be enslaved. Covenant faith also meant freedom in due time for an alien. The text is concerned with bondservants. These could be male and female. A man could be sentenced to bondservants to make restitution for an unpaid debt or for theft. If the man to whom the sentenced man owed money needed his due gold or silver payment at once, then he could sell the man's labour to someone else and so collect his money. Such a service could be up to 6 years. A release was necessary on the Sabbath or 7th year. At times, a man would find himself unable to make restitution for a debt by means of bond service because it would increase his loss to leave his property and work. In such a case, according to Exodus chapter 21, verses 7 to 11, he could send his young daughter to be a household servant. She could not be used as a field hand, and her life was one protected by law. On the year of release, such bondservants could not be sent away empty-handed. They were to be given of the man's produce in substantial forms, that is, livestock, wine, or grain. The value of a bondservant was greater than that of a hired worker, because the bondservant, during his or her stay, was a part of the family. The basis for such legislation is plainly stated. In verse 15, the people are told to remember their redemption from Egypt by God's sovereign grace. Having received grace from God, we are to manifest it to others. This is the foundation of the truly charitable society according to God's law. Since we all have received in some way God's grace and mercy, we must all be God's instruments of mercy to others. The reminder here is of God's work. For us, it is His salvation through Jesus Christ. This is the foundation of the charitable society. The bondservant in a godly family was a member of the family. It was thus possible, and not uncommon, for a man who had a good master to choose to remain with him. His ability to survive on his own might also be limited. At the conclusion of his time of service, he could ask to remain as a permanent servant member of the family. If so, he had to undergo a ceremony marking his status. His ear was pierced. This was an ancient mark of a subordinated and protected status. Women have worn earrings to show that they are under a man's care and protection, and costly earrings have been a way of showing the wealth of their man. A permanent bondsman would show, by way of his pierced ear and an earring, his subordination to his master. 2 ears were pierced for a woman, 1 for a man. The ear, because of hearing, represents obedience. In the Code of Hammurabi, Law 282, we read, "If a male slave has said to his master, 'You are not my master,' his master shall prove him to be a slave and cut off his ear." This signified disobedience. The ear was pierced against the door of the house. This meant that, as the pierced ear bled in the doorway, it established a covenant whereby the man so accepted became a member of that house and family. Even before such an event, the man, as a member of God's covenant, is described as "thy brother," verse 12. If the bondservant chose to leave when his debt was worked off, he was to be sent away liberally provided with various goods. The master was required to endow such person generously. "Thou shalt furnish him liberally," in verse 14, translates a Hebrew idiom meaning to make him a necklace. In antiquity, and in some areas to this day, women in particular would wear necklaces of jewels, gold and silver, and also bracelets. By analogy, the former bondservant, male or female, would manifest the wealth, liberality, and grace of his recent master. If the bondservant chose not to leave, he or she thereafter was a member of the family for life. In case of illness or the infirmities of age, they then received care as a member of the family. This meant that the choice of permanent bond servitude paid off with real benefits, mainly a lifetime of security. Its price was a loss of independence. The man lost his freedom to be a covenant freeman in the nation. He had no voice in community affairs. He was a subordinate, not a freeman. The command in verses 13 and 14 to give liberally to the departing bondservant has also as its premise God's ownership of all things. All that we have is God's providence towards us. We are stewards before God, not lords and creators. As a result, God commands our use of all things, including ourselves. Grace must govern us and, through us, all of society. It is a stupid and malicious error to see God's law as punitive only. Among many other laws, the laws of charity tell us that God's grace is very much a part of His law. The Charitable Society denies neither grace nor judgment. Both are essential to a godly society. Consider the context of these laws. Someone has, by means fair or foul, ended up in court. The court does not wipe out his offence. Rather, he is sentenced to bond service. As such a servant, he works off his debt or obligation and, at the end of such work, receives his freedom with liberal gifts if he has been a good servant. From start to finish, this law sets forth both justice and grace. The two are thoroughly intermingled. The Charitable Society cannot exist if the claims of justice are denied, and we see God's remarkable ways even in these laws. Remember, too, that habitual criminals were executed. These laws do not cover them. In verses 19 to 23, we have the law of firstlings. At the time of a pilgrimage festival, the firstlings would be eaten. In the wilderness, the sanctuary was in the middle of the camp, so the firstling could be eaten on the 8th day. Exodus chapter 22, verse 30. Now, with Canaan ahead, this would not be possible for those living at a distance, and so we have these and related laws. Blemished animals were not to be taken to the sanctuary, but eaten locally, according to verse 23. Both those who were clean and unclean could share the blemished firstling, even as they shared the roebuck of the deer, but neither could eat the blood. Verse 24. Since aliens would have no objection to the blood, this meant that, on a man's property and in his house, his faith and its law governed the foreigner who was a guest. Such an alien could practice his faith and diet at his house, but not in the home of a covenant keeper. These laws have been important in our history. They were observed in America as long as bond service was Christian. Nominal Christians were ready to abuse such a plan. Welfarism replaces godly charity and law with a doctrine of entitlements. The needy insist on their rights, and this leads, whether in Rome or today, to a cult of victimization. The poor or needy see themselves as victims with rights and entitlements. In Rome, it led not only to a right to welfare, but to entertainment. Slaves are such, either by disaster or by nature. The slave who is a slave by nature expects to be taken care of. He sees it as a natural right that others should provide for him. This mentality has been common throughout history, and when it dominates a society, the results are disastrous. It destroys both those who believe in the natural right to welfare and also those who tolerate it. A return to godly charity is urgently needed, for we must be members of one another. Ephesians chapter 4, verse 25.